So the other day I was browsing Twitter because I hate myself when something caught my attention. Specifically, this screenshot showed up on my feed showing the trailer for something called I Am Not Starfire. And as you can tell, people were really not happy about this one, and it essentially became the internet's punching bag for the day. I instantly thought, I bet this is going to be another snowflake and safe space debacle. Some more of that good old out-of-touch corporate pandering that is so incredibly fun to rip into. So I watched the trailer, gleefully anticipating whatever monstrosity these corporate cronies had cooked up for us, and my first reaction after the trailer was confusion, because nothing in that trailer seemed that odd or pandering or out of place. It struck me as a pretty normal trailer for a young adult graphic novel, so I figured I had to be missing something. So I started digging, and I found out that some videos have already been made about this, and people had already started speaking about this topic some months ago, so I decided to check it out, and I am still mostly confused. So that's what we're doing today. Going over what we know about I Am Not Starfire, what the internet has been saying about it, and why I think that a lot of the reaction and backlash to it is way out of proportion. I Am Not Starfire is an upcoming young adult graphic novel written by Mariko Tamaki and illustrated by Yoshi Tani. According to the summary, the main character is Mandy, the superpower-less daughter of Starfire and an undisclosed father. 17-year-old Mandy has grown up in the spotlight and has felt pressure to measure up to her mother's fame and legacy. But she doesn't feel like she can do that and instead wants to bypass the traditional college route, which would go against her mother's expectations, and travel to France. But a wrench gets thrown in her plans when she starts crushing on fellow student Claire, who she likes and seemingly wants to stay near. As this is happening, Mandy's evil and powerful aunt shows up, and now Mandy has to make choices between the life she wants to live and the life that she's being thrust into. The novel will be released on the 27th of this month. There are several reasons that I've been able to gather as far as why people are not happy about this and why there has been this intense backlash to the novel. The arguments range from fair enough to my brain still cannot comprehend why this is being said. I will be referencing some other videos on the topic and popular comments under these videos, as DC has turned the comments off on the trailer. Can't use that too much as a source. I've also had some people give me their inputs on Twitter and on Discord, so let's crack into it. Obviously not every single argument made will be in this video. I just tried to pull the major ones out. One issue I've seen people bring up is that Mandy is not Nightstar or Mary Grayson, who is the most popular daughter of Starfire in the DC universe. I can understand wanting to see a more popular, already established character get their stories told and be made a bit more mainstream. My only thing with it is that Nightstar is not a core canon character. She only exists in alternate universes. There are other universes where Starfire actually has a son, and plenty of others where no children are talked about. So it's not like the character of Mandy is replacing Nightstar. Mandy is a different character completely. It is essentially a different universe within the multiverse. I have not seen anyone talk about this directly, but I think it's entirely possible that DC may have hyped up a story coming out about Starfire's daughter, and people got excited thinking that it would be Nightstar, and DC let that hype build, and people were disappointed to see that it wasn't. That I would completely understand, if that were the only argument I saw being made. It's not even the primary argument that I see being made, but I'm saving that one for a smidge later. I have also seen people complain that they do not like the art style, and yeah, I'm not exactly disagreeing. This white shading on Starfire's leg causes me physical pain. It's not the worst I've seen. It's also not great. The cover doesn't look super appealing on its own. Some of the panels look better in my opinion from the preview. I get all of that. It was probably designed that way because it's meant to be marketed towards a younger crowd. Doesn't mean that the style is going to appeal to everyone. But these complaints were minuscule to how much I saw them compared to the ones that I'm about to talk about. Because by far, when I asked people about it and when I went digging through videos and comments, the main reason they brought up for the backlash existing was that the main character is a bad self-insert of the author and kind of general complaints about the author. So let's explore, shall we? Based off my earlier research, I thought maybe Mariko was a notoriously bad writer, but she has pretty good reviews for her comics, especially her previous works with DC. Haven't read her work myself, can't comment too much on that from experience. I did have some people tell me that she was an SJW type, which tells me absolutely nothing. It's one of those things that has been so overused that I would have to see specific examples to make comments about it. I tried looking on her Twitter if I could find any sort of controversy surrounding her, but I didn't really find anything of that vein. The most controversy I saw about her was one of her original comics being challenged for its LGBT characters and mature themes by parents. I can tell she definitely seems to be a left-leaning pro-LGBT and feminism type, which I don't see any inherent problems with. Maybe she's more of a pop McFeminism type, but I really don't know. I must say though, the things that get said about the author in this situation goes way off the deep end from here. So this is the character, this is the author, or at least this is the picture of the author I have seen people use to make their point. And several people have said that the hair and body type of the two are identical, and therefore the character of Mandy is totally a self-insert of the author.
Okay. All right, let's look at this, guys. Yeah, this isn't a self-insert at all. This isn't a self-insert at all. This is Starfire's daughter right here. This is the writer. Let's look one more time, guys. Not a self-insert at all.
Oh, wait, you serious?
There is a lot to unpack here, so the argument seems to be that since the author, who is an ethnically Asian woman, so I assume she naturally has dark hair, has black hair and bangs, and in this particular photo is wearing dark clothes, Mandy, who dyes her hair black and also has bangs, therefore must be a self-insert character. The whole thing that they have identical body types is just blatantly untrue. Mariko has a normal body type and a pretty average build, especially for a middle-aged woman. And also don't think that I didn't notice that the image they were using is from a lower angle, which is less flattering and does make it seem like she has more of a double chin, conveniently also showing her face, when if you look at any other photo of her, that is clearly not a great representation of what she looks like. Meanwhile, Mandy is clearly bigger and shorter. This woman is not fat. And if you genuinely think she is, that's a you problem. You have very skewed perspectives of what is fat and what is not. So are we really going to try and argue that because the author has the same hair color as the character and that they have two different style of bangs, but they do both have bangs, I suppose, that makes it a self-insert? Are authors not allowed to write characters with any physical similarities to them? Never mind all of the differences between the two. Mandy has green eyes and a septum piercing and shaved eyebrows. Mariko has none of that. And she often likes to keep teal in her hair. She also isn't goth. I don't think Mandy is Asian. At most, she could be half Asian, though she does naturally have ginger hair and green eyes, so I would be doubtful of that. And contrary to what I saw an alarming number of people saying, they don't have the same body type at all. I genuinely do not get this argument. And it seems to be the one fueling a lot of the backlash towards this comic, with people seemingly building off this claim, saying that the author is projecting her own mommy issues into the comic. And I would like to see evidence of this that isn't the they look identical argument, because I don't think that argument holds any water. You know what makes infinitely more sense as to why Mandy looks the way she does? The whole point of her character is that she isn't her mother. She doesn't want to be. Like, in the description of the comic, it says that Starfire is the gorgeous, bright, bubbly, tall one. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. And Mandy is not. So they designed Mandy to be the visual opposite of Starfire. What is the opposite of preppy and bright? Goth and dark. Skinny versus chubby, tall versus short. I would be willing to bet my right kidney that that's why the design choices for Mandy were made, not because of this weird theory that the author is trying to self-insert herself. I also really don't think that people would be nearly as mad if the character were skinny, just throwing it out there. I even found redesigns where everything is pretty much exactly the same, but Mandy is drawn more conventionally attractive. Can't say I'm really shocked, never mind all the fat jokes that I've seen made against her. The only other similarity between Mariko and Mandy that I could find is that they are both lesbian, and I had to dig a little bit to even find out that Mariko was a lesbian, which... Am I supposed to be shocked that DC hired a lesbian writer to write a lesbian character? Because I'm really not. I think anyone can write any type of character in theory, but if you have a successful author in your pocket who can likely give some more personal insight to the experience of a character due to them sharing that part of their life, I fail to see an issue with that. Which also leads me into another thing. I saw several comments that said that Mandy's only personality trait was her sexuality, ergo that is just stupid pandering, which I mean, sure, you can think that if you completely ignore the entire part of the description that says Mandy's personality is much more fueled by growing up in the shadow of her mother and how she wants to break out of that and be her own person, but nah, man, this one line where it says Mandy starts crushing on Claire means the only stat Mandy has is lesbian, because that's how pandering works, kids. The next big arguments I saw were people complaining that the plot was bad. That also confused me as to how people know the plot, given the novel hasn't been released yet. I saw that DC did put out some previews, but the main preview was several image panels that aren't even in chronological order or have any text, so not something a lot of plot can be drawn out of. Though there have been a couple of small page previews with dialogue where we see Mandy reacting harshly to her mother. I will speak on that in a minute. But more generally, what I think most people mean is that they have an issue with the basic premise and what bits of information we've gotten so far. One big complaint I saw is that they think it's incredibly unrealistic that the child of a superhero like Starfire wouldn't have any powers. Genetics are already weird enough in the real world, let alone in fantasy writing. But even then, the concept of a non-powered kid born to a powerful parent isn't new at all. In the 2004 cinematic masterpiece, Sky High. I'm kidding, Sky High came out in 2005, but in the lore of Sky High, that's a sentence I never thought I would say, the lore of Sky High. You can have superheroes have kids without powers. You also have squibs in Harry Potter, non-benders in Avatar The Last Airbender born to bender parents. The literal Avatar has a non-bender kid. Pretty much any media where powers are a thing, you have the possibility presented that their children can be born powerless, especially if one parent isn't powerful, which we can assume of Mandy's father. I don't see it as a stretch at all to have a superhero have a non-powerful kid, and that seems to be the story that DC and the author wants to explore. How does one grow up with one of the most powerful superheroes as a parent without powers of their own? How do you even begin to live up to that? It's not a traditional superhero story, but I don't think every story told in a genre has to be, especially for a separate young adult novel. It's a bit of a different perspective on the superhero universe. It's fine if the premise doesn't interest you, but I don't see how the premise in and of itself is bad. I even saw some people discussing how superhero novels were about escapism, and therefore following a powerless person was bad because it ruined immersion, and what? I am tempted to throw the whole suitcase out, but one, a character does not have to be super powered for a piece of media to be escapism. Two, this seems to be ignoring the entire aspect of Starfire's evil sister, Mandy's aunt, coming to fuck with shit and Mandy seemingly teaming up with her mom to help. That seems very much like a fantasy escapism story to me. Three, and this is the point that I cannot stress enough, there is not enough of the novel out to make any kind of broad judgments about its content or how people will relate to it. Just because a story differs slightly from the convention does not mean that it's going to be bad. Another common complaint I saw is some people were saying that it was really stupid to have Mandy hate one of the most beloved comic characters in Starfire. Teenagers rebel against their parents. Shocking concept, I know, and rebellious teens in particular will claim they hate their parents when they actually don't, and even Starfire could struggle in being a parent and not know the right things to say or do, even if they do mean well. And let's just say that Mandy did outright fully actually despise her mother. The comic could have something to say about how external pressure and even well-meaning pressure from Starfire could be internalized in Mandy, and that leads to her having a growing resentment that builds up to the point that she directs it at her mother, as her mother's stardom and powers is where that pressure mainly comes from. But Spy, you don't know that. You are absolutely correct. I have no idea what the whole comic is going to be like. Nobody else does either. But people seem really content to run with this idea of a bad self-insert character and a poorly written plot when there is so little of it out. And if you've seen everything that they have put out so far for the comic and you are not interested in it, that is completely fine. But I think that people have moved well beyond reasonable criticisms or concerns to making these huge stretches and making very disparaging comments about the character and the author that are incredibly unwarranted. A good example packaged into this one tweet that I saw. This tweet shows some of the panels with text I have seen about the comic, and it says that it makes the character unlikable, essentially saying that it can be a bad move to have a unlikable protagonist. My only counter to that point would be that we are seeing Mandy at the very beginning of her journey, and we have seen characters start out as annoying or even full-on jerks who grow into better people and are still entertaining to read about. Now, if she always stays unlikable, another story, can't really know that yet. But even if we just completely disregard all of that, it is completely fine to criticize this in the context that you think having a protagonist act this way might turn people off from the rest of the comic. That is a genuine criticism that I can understand, even if I do think that it's being made off of a very small bit of the comic. But how does this somehow circle back into the whole idea of a self-insert? Even if this does turn out to be a bad writing decision, that still doesn't automatically make it a self-insert situation. I don't get why that's being used to fuel so much of the hate here. Listen, the comic could be absolute trash. It could end up being a lot of the things that people are saying about it. But I don't think people have much of a place to say some of the things that they are, because it's a lot of assumption making and jumping to conclusions based off some weak or disjointed evidence. That is where this differs for me from Snowflake and Safe Space. The comic could have been the most perfectly written thing ever. It would not have mattered. This design and name choice was inherently the problem, completely independent of what story it took place in. I Am Not Starfire doesn't seem to have much about it that makes its mere existence an inherent problem. People are making a problem out of things that might happen, or their interpretation of what information we have so far, or they're making, from what I can tell, baseless claims about the author of the comic, and that's my issue with the amount and the ferocity of this backlash. This is well beyond the internet just not liking a concept. And again, being super clear, you don't have to be excited for the comics. Doubts about it and how it will turn out are 100% fine. I'm just concerned with the claims about the author being brought up into this, and the comments being made about a lesbian character simply existing somehow being inherently pandering, mockery of the characters and even the author's imagined size, and how people are making a lot of generalized comments about the entire plot of a comic that isn't even out yet. That's where I have my issues. I appreciate if you got to this point in the video. Given how much everyone else seems to disagree with me on this one, I am hoping people will actually listen to my points instead of just disliking and leaving a very ill-informed comment that will make them look like an idiot, and I will laugh at them. But the internet is crazy and rarely kind, so I suppose we shall see. If you're interested in seeing more from me, I do pop culture commentary, art videos, video essays. Feel free to check out more from me, and I hope you all have a great day. I'll see ya.